When I was about 10 years old, I decided that I wanted to go see my friend. I don't remember who that friend was, but he was inspiration enough for me to want to go see him. Hop on my bike. Our town was small, so knowing that my friend lived all the way across town didn't seem like a big deal. Late on a sleepy and Sunday afternoon, my brother was gone, and my mother and my stepfather were napping in the living room. I walked outside, got on my yellow bike, and rode off. To your average adult, it was a 15-minute bike ride at the most, 30 minutes on foot maybe, uphill, pushing hard, and the promise of a fast, fun ride going back downhill. My legs were shorter, though. Pushed as hard as I could to get up the hill, puffed and pushed the bike and lifted my legs a good 30 minutes and still only got halfway up. I paused and took a minute to think about it, and I gave up, jumped on the bike, coasted back down the hill, pulling easily into our street, and a scene that still gives me a start to recall. There was a huge red fire truck in front of our house, and a green ambulance, and 2 police cars, all with their lights going. My first thought, honestly, was, hey, awesome, a fire truck. And then I thought, oh no, something terrible must have happened. But when I got inside the front door, there was a rush of noise and energy, and I was suddenly caught up in my mother's arms. Someone threw a blanket around my shoulders, which was odd, seeing as how it was summer. You could barely move around in our living room for everyone in it. Even my big brother was suddenly nice and caring. What gives? All of this, it turned out, was for me. I hadn't bothered to tell anyone where I was going when I jumped on my bike. Truth is, I just didn't want to wake anybody up. But after I'd left, my mother had awoken from her nap, couldn't find me, and she went into mom mode. Everyone, it seems, had shown up and had helpfully assumed the worst. Beads of perspiration sat on many a brow. They were big exhales when they saw me. Just for my own part, I thought all the attention was fantastic. Someone asked me if there was anything I needed, and I thought about it, and I said, well, I haven't had a chocolate malt in a long time. And from the back of the room, a voice yelled out, somebody get this kid a malt. And then, just like that, you know how your memory works and elides everything. It's all so slippery. The house was small and quiet again. I slipped out of my mother's arms, away from her hands that tousled my hair. And after a while, I went out and sat on the front porch step in the humidity of the early evening. The sky still blue, the neighbor's mower going, and me scraping the bottom of a styrofoam cup with a plastic spoon, chilled in the belly, warm on the outside. True love, the love of God for everything God makes, true love will go to any length to retrieve its object. There is no clearer reflection of that love, no stronger bond, to my mind, no higher love to be found on earth that surpasses the love of a parent for a child. You can try to understand it, but it's so much bigger than the mind can possibly comprehend. Real love is total. It goes as far as it has to, and sometimes that's a mighty long way. This love makes everything go. It forgives at its own incalculable expense. My mother did the modern version of just exactly this when she whipped up every emergency service in town because she didn't know whether I might have gotten myself someplace dangerous. What wondrous love was that? We've been now in Advent once more toward the center post of our Christian narrative, the love of God as of a parent for an only child, manifest in the person whom we rightly call the Messiah, incarnation of God. Fierce protection, great and immeasurable and infinitely forgiving love. Christ is both signpost and guide. But Advent is not an entirely passive affair. If we are loved, so may we give love freely in return. So yes, we do have a part in this drama. What then is our response to all this? I'd suggest that our response is no more complicated than a decision to turn around and head back home. No matter how much my family cared about me, it wouldn't have made much of a difference if I'd continued to wander off, gotten lost, or who knows what. Gravity and good sense won the day, woke me up to the facts. The 1 minute that I took to stop and make my decision halfway up the hill was one of the most valuable minutes of my life. Well, that and the reception I got when I pulled into the driveway. I did not reject adventure that day. I embraced what I already knew to be true. Turning around and coming home was the only option that actually made any sense that day. There is a there and back style story in the Bible in Luke chapter 15. Another moment where things hinge on an important realization. It's about this impudent son who takes early withdrawal of his inheritance, goes off and squanders it. And there are two key moments in the story. The first is when the son realizes he can't go on doing this anymore. It says he came to himself. He stopped pedaling uphill long enough to realize and receive this divine truth. It's what some call a moment of clarity, that flash of insight when he realizes that his life has spiraled out of control. It's what gives him the courage to return home. The second key moment is when he pulls up to the metaphorical driveway and he is met by his loving and forgiving father. And the whole thing starts a party. One of those what was lost has been found types of parties that are so common in the Gospels. And just so, when you look up the etymology of the word religion, you find it means something like bind back or tie fast or reconnect. And the re part is the intensifier. It's happening again. We're going over it all again. In Advent, starting to go over it all again. It's happening again. We're bound again to God through a daily decision to head on back home, to return to our source and to tune the inner antenna in a Godward direction. To reconnect, practically speaking, is first to wake up. Prophets like John the Baptist are good at waking us up, rousing us, dunking us in cold water. asking if we really want to continue on the selfish path, or if there isn't somewhere else we'd ought to be right now, like home, at home with God. And I dare say that if you'd stood in front of me on that summer afternoon years ago and attempted to explain all of this to me, I'd have shrugged my skinny shoulders and just gone on my way. Because to a child who is still alive to the magic of the world and who isn't limited by what he thinks he knows, this is actually self-evident. This love is obvious. Somewhere along the way, we got a little lost. We became burdened with obligations. We forgot what was necessary to know. You don't need to dress it up with words. In fact, sometimes words can keep us from comprehending. What's called for today is not an idea, not an abstraction, and certainly not an explanation, rather an experience of God that is rooted in relationship with God. That all comes from spending time at home. Look, all I know is this, that to this very day, every time I give my mom a hug, I know beyond all knowing, beyond all need of knowing, because I just know automatically already that I am loved. And I'm here to tell you that you are too. God throws willing arms around us, and we're 10 years old, and with big, salty tears, our hair gets mussed. Welcome home. I love you. Amen.